You're listening to the Built in Barcelona podcast with Kris Rawcliffe. Welcome back to the Built in Barcelona podcast, where we dive into stories behind the founders shaping Barcelona's startup scene. Today, I'm joined by Aran Kapila, co-founder and managing director of HighCohesion, an e-commerce integration company working with a roster of impressive global brands like Alessi, Represent Clothing, and New Era, to name but just a few. Aran started the company with two co-founders back in 2019 whilst he was living here in Barcelona, and has now grown it into a high-growth, remote-first team with roots in both the UK and in Spain. Today, we'll talk about the realities of founding a startup across borders, what it takes to build traction, and why Barcelona is such an exciting place for tech and e-commerce right now. Let's get into it. Aran, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kris. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for taking the time. Good to see you. How long have you been in Barcelona?
So about 8 years now. I moved here with my partner, Janky, in August 2017. We've been in and out the city for a few months or years at times since then. But now it's very much become home.
Wow, yeah, 8 years. I'm also 8 years in, which wasn't the plan when I moved here, to be honest. I thought I would be here for about a year. And yeah, just as more time has passed, the more it's kind of grabbed me. And now it feels quite difficult to leave. What's your favorite thing about living here these days after so long?
Well, about a year ago, we moved house, and we now live kind of right on the edge of the city, up on the hill. So kind of Barcelona, the opposite side of the city to the sea. Right behind the house is a big forest, and I would say probably my favorite thing is being able to be in that forest every day, normally walking our dog in the morning, but really kind of an awesome way to start the day, especially when your day normally involves staring at a computer screen for hours on end. It's a bit of a game changer having that so close.
Yeah, I mean, I've also recently, so I used to live down by the beach in Poblano, and recently, because of my wife, moved up to not quite as high up as you're living, but sort of closer to the hills at the back of the city. And yeah, having access to that forest, the Collserola, is just so lovely. Like the views from up there are amazing. I mean, I've been to your house, and the views you guys have from your living room and from the terrace are just amazing. So very. I can see why you like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's a busy city now, I think. So anything that gets away from that a little bit is nice.
Yeah, that is true, and I think as we get a bit older as well, right?
Yeah, definitely different. We're a little bit different to 8 years ago, it's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who don't know you yet, how would you describe HighCohesion?
So we are known as what is an iPaaS business, so integration platform as a service. Basically, we send data from one system to another, and we are focused in on e-commerce and retail brands. So we integrate the technology systems or the tech stacks for some of the world's fastest growing apparel brands. So you mentioned a few at the beginning, the likes of Represent Clothing, Adanola, Through Dark, who are all based in the UK, and the likes of Little Sleepies in the US, who the audience might know as US company that does the matching pajama sets for parents, kids, dog, whatever else. But yeah, some of these brands are seeing kind of triple digit growth year on year, and with it, that kind of brings a lot of integration needs. And so HighCohesion is the platform and the services that sit around our platform, helping those types of brands design, implement, and then run on an ongoing basis integrations between those systems. I guess today's brands, typically when they hit maybe around 30 million pounds or euros in revenue, are doing things that are complicated from a technology and a data and an operations perspective. So that it might be that they've moved into lots of different sales channels. So they're no longer just D2C or direct to consumer online. They might be doing wholesale, physical retail, marketplaces, etc. They might also have a growing international presence, so multiple websites, multiple countries, maybe multiple warehouses, and multiple international subsidiaries, which brings with it kind of different tax, legal requirements, or they might have very kind of spiky sales periods. They might be kind of a hype-based brand. So people go crazy when they drop a new product, or a celebrity starts wearing an item of theirs. Or most typically, I guess, in our customers is some combination of all of those. So if you kind of put that all together, imagine the data flowing between different systems, whether it's website, warehouse, finance, etc., etc. There's a real need to kind of orchestrate that data flow properly, and that's what we do.
Wow, it sounds incredibly complicated.
Can be. I mean, if you boil it down, we basically have to move data from one place to another at the right place at the right time.
Sure, but I mean that's no easy feat, right? Like I can imagine that there's some very complicated technology involved in being able to do that.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think having a robust platform and software is a massive part of it. Something that can handle a brand that's doing maybe kind of tens of thousands of orders in a couple of minutes on Black Friday. But also, I think, the secret sources and also the people in the team, in our team, that kind of support, design, implement those integrations as well. The platform is only as good as kind of the logic that goes into those integrations, and the entire team has a deep either e-com or integrations background, which I think has become a little bit of our secret sauce.
Take us back to 2019. How did all of this come about? How did you come up with the idea for HighCohesion?
So the business was started, May 2029. And as you mentioned at the beginning, there's two other co-founders in the mix. So Andy Slater and Luke Hodgson. So Andy and Luke were actually co-founders of another iPaaS business called Patchworks, who, for anyone in the UK, have become pretty well-known platform there, maybe less so in Europe. Cut a long story short, they wanted to take that business in a particular direction. That kind of were at odds, in that thinking, I guess, with their other co-founder and the board. With HighCohesion, saw an opportunity to do things differently elsewhere. At the time, I was trying to make a very different business in a different space, energy trading software work. And ultimately that kind of crashed and burned after a couple of years of trying. But I'd been friends with Luke for a long time. Well, actually, through yourself. It was a bit of a perfect storm, really. Luke and I had been bouncing ideas around. We'd even kind of tried a little bit of a trial between Patchworks at the time, the company I was building, on a couple of integration things. And it was, that perfect storm, I guess, of Luke's commercial experience, great network in the e-com space, Andy's technical background, so he's a technical founder, and then my product and enterprise background. So the ingredients were there, I guess, from day one to build something that could grow quickly, but do it in a mature way, in a way that kind of aligned to our vision from day one. I guess from what Luke and Andy did in their previous business and my experience in my first startup, a lot of mistakes, a lot of things we wanted to make sure we didn't repeat in HighCohesion. And I think we just came together at the right time, really.
Okay. And did you have an e-com background before you started with HighCohesion?
Yes. So prior to the first startup that I mentioned, my background was in management consulting, but with a retail focus. So I worked mainly with enterprise brands, so the likes of Estee Lauder, Reckitt, John Lewis, etc., helping those brands actually that had either previously been B2B or very enterprise enter either into new markets, smaller D2C markets, or launch new products, whether that was Internet of Things, whether it was kind of a hyper localized store, whatever. But my background had been in retail as well.
Okay. And so it must have been, well, you were saying you were in energy before you joined HighCohesion. So was it exciting getting back into the world of e-com and retail?
It was definitely. I think my knowledge of energy, and even more so energy trading, was pretty limited. And even after, I would say, a couple of years of, trying to start a software product in that space, it's still pretty limited. So I think, it's what I love about e-com and retail is the fact it's tangible, right? Although we're working in software and data as HighCohesion, ultimately we're talking about getting physical goods from raw materials into the hands of a customer. And, we all kind of touch and feel those types of goods all day, every day. And I love that tangibility of it. It's very easy to see where the impact of something that we're doing or another business or a customer is doing, in our ecosystem. It's very easy to see the tangibility of those changes. I guess in finance and trading and energy, you're definitely that step removed from that side of things.
Yeah, and it must be really exciting today with some of the brands that you're working with being part of, when Represent Clothing are doing special drops and that type of thing. Like being part of that must be really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. But to be able to see something go live, and lots of our brands are in UK's fastest growing 100 businesses now. They're inviting us to launches of, when they launch a new physical store for the first time or second time or third time, as some of our brands are doing. And, you go to an event and they're kind of shouting out the work that you've done together on stage. It's great. It's great.
And you mentioned all three of you co-founders had come from other businesses where you'd maybe made some mistakes and you didn't want to repeat those, and you wanted to do things differently with HighCohesion. What were some of the early signs when you started HighCohesion that you felt like this is getting some traction?
I think there's a couple of things that stand out to me. So I think one of those is our early customers, and some of it's luck. I think some of it's right place, right time, and some of it was our background in the industry as founders. Some of those early customers were big names. I think one of our first customers was Pure Electric, who are now a massive electric scooter, electric mobility company in the UK. Alessi, obviously global brand, based in Italy, that they do homeware. Grenade, who do nutrition bars. Some of our earliest customers were massive customers. And, the ball was in our court then, really, to make integrations work for them. Although we were a tiny team with a very kind of junior product when those customers came on board, I think we had the motivation, but also the knowledge and the kind of clear vision of what we wanted to do for those brands in our heads the whole way through. And most of those early customers are still with us today. So I think the fact that right from day one we were solving problems for customers was definitely one sign. I think the other was we started the business in May 2019, as I just said, but really, the very early signs of traction were probably late 2019. So a few months before that, before COVID hit, obviously in March 2020. As everyone will know, you could no longer go into a store. You could no longer do your shopping in store. So brands were either closing or not trading, or they were moving their entire operations to online. And so this meant either brands that had previously been very physically, most of their trading had been from having a physical presence, were now moving to online, which meant they needed to integrate maybe complex supply chains, legacy systems, so kind of complex stuff from an integration perspective. Or what you also saw was lots of our customers were born in COVID, and they were very creative led. So, a lot of them were kind of first time e-com founders, not technical people at all, amazing at creating the product, the physical product, building community, a following, etc. Not great at the technical stuff, and I think we were perfectly positioned as we had capacity to deliver. We could be quick, we could be agile, for want of a better cliched word. But I think it was that right place, right time again. So I think those two things together, then I think in that first year, there were kind of a lot of green green shoots.
And what was it like starting a business remotely while the other two founders were in another country back in the UK?
Right in the infancy of the business, we were remote native pretty much from day one. So I think by the time we brought on our first team members, we were in deep COVID. Remote was, it wasn't even a choice not to be remote. So I think being forced into that and not kind of wondering if the grass was greener on the other side of being all in the same country at the same time helped. Even today, we do definitely spend more time together as a team, with customers, with partners. We're still making remote work exceptionally well, I would say. Um, and Andy and Luke loved Barcelona as well, so that helped. I mean, I think in those first few years, I saw them more in Barcelona than in the UK. So I didn't have to go anywhere, which made that side easy as well. But more seriously, I think the fact that we're remote first from day one was just a real advantage in that regard.
Yeah, and you still are a fully remote company, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. We now have two separate businesses. HighCohesion is a software business, a business called Commerce Thinking as an out-and-out consultancy and advisory business. Both businesses are totally remote. HighCohesion now has people mostly in Europe. We're still a small team, but across the UK, Ireland, Spain, we are about to bring on somebody who's going to be based in Portugal, and we've also got somebody who joined us about 4 or 5 months ago who's based in New Zealand. So still very much a remote business.
And you wouldn't see that changing in the future. You guys are fully set up that way. And like, what are the sort of the advantages or disadvantages of that approach?
So there's a few advantages. We will stay remote, definitely. We don't see us ever going to an office or a fixed place of work. Where I do see us going, and where we are slowly going, is spending more time in person with customers, with partners, and with each other as a team. I think that's the reason that we're able to do that, and an advantage of being remote is you're not tied to an office. So both from having to be there because that's your place of work, but also from an expense perspective. If you're paying 8, 9, 100, 1,000 euros to have everybody, per person in an office every month, that's, as you start growing a team, that's a massive expense. Where we're able to deploy that money is on traveling, is on making sure that people can travel comfortably, stay in a hotel, and then they can spend a day, a couple of days with a customer or with each other as a team. And that's really kind of focused quality time, which again, if we were in an office, you'd still have a bit more hesitation doing that traveling. So kind of, massive advantage, I think, is your time in person, whether that's us as a company or with customers, is really focused, and you really think about, okay, why am I going to be there? What are we going to get out of it, etc.
And do you, with a lot of, because a lot of your clients are based in the UK, is that right?
They are gradually changing. So most of our customers are still UK based. We're now starting to see traction in the US and in the Nordics as well. And then kind of very early first signs of kind of Iberian customers as well, whether that's brands or partners in Portugal or here as well in Spain. But most of them are in the UK still.
Okay. So does that require you to travel quite a lot then?
It does. Yeah, I would say more and more. Kind of as founder, a lot of my travel is focused on those early stage conversations with customers, and then also with our partners, kind of building those relationships, and spending time in person with partners as well. So it does require a lot of travel, a lot to the UK. Upcoming, I'll also be in Germany and in the US later on this year. So I would probably say once every 2 or 3 weeks, I'm traveling for a couple of days. So don't get me wrong. Would it be easier for me to be in the UK personally? Almost certainly. I'm here now, so we're making it work.
What caused you to stay here? As you said, like be easier for you to be in the UK. What caused you to stay in Barcelona?
Well, I think a combination of things. I think one is a bit like you. We moved here with the thought of coming here for a year. Kind of fell in love with the place. I think before I lived in London for 12 years, I think Barcelona is a smaller, more compact city. Although it is very busy, definitely has a more relaxed vibe to it. But yeah, I mean, I love being here. The access to the outdoors, the city itself, the friends that we've made here, the chance to learn another language. Fundamentally, and I'm sure you feel this at times as well, being able to finish work and go down to the sea or go up into the hills makes it feel like you're on holiday still every day,
Yeah.
which, a big part of that, I think, is being not in the country that you're from. But I just can't imagine, kind of leaving here right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you said that thing about being on holiday, actually. I went to play paddle with a mutual friend of ours a couple of weeks ago there's a sports center down on the beach in Barceloneta. And when we walked out, there's like all these outdoor swimming pools, and you've got to walk past the swimming pools to get to the paddle courts. And he was like, it was kind of at sunset time. It was after work. And he was like, don't you just feel like you've literally just arrived at like an all-inclusive hotel on like the first night of holiday, and you're kind of scoping out where you're going to put your beach towel tomorrow, on which sun deck chairs and stuff. And I was like, yeah, it really does feel like that. And it's amazing. I mean, I've been here for 8 years, and stuff like that still gets me. It still has that like holiday feel to it, even after so long. So yeah, I completely empathize with that. And it's just great to hear that you've been able to. Obviously, there are challenges, and you have to travel, etc. But for you to be able to sustain and build a company in all these different markets remotely from Barcelona, I think is amazing. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's had its challenges, definitely. But yeah, we've made it work. I think COVID had brought around a lot of challenges for a lot of people, a lot of businesses with a high cohesion lens on it. I think for us, it was being much more positive than a negative.
Yeah, awesome. And you obviously founded the company in the UK, but recently you set up a Spanish entity, right?
Yes.
What pushed you to take that step?
So a couple of reasons. One was the ability to kind of employ locally, a bit more easily, but kind of crucially making Spanish or people in Barcelona feel like they were part of High Cohesion. The people here in Spain, so there's three of us now based in Spain, um, all are employed or tied to HighCohesion SL, which is our entity in Spain. One of the big drivers was the employee that's been with us longest, Juan, was living in France, worked kind of for us as a freelancer, moved back to Spain, and I think a big thing for him was he'd obviously been with us since the very early days, but he wanted to feel like he was part of HighCohesion, and him and I actually had a long and like frank discussion about, okay, well, we're on this freelance model now, but let's start looking into HighCohesion SL. We formed that, and at the same time, in parallel, we had been interviewing developers and also a couple of product people for a product role here in Spain. And I think that kind of blip where freelancing or be self-employed was super popular in COVID had actually started to drop off. And I think people were looking for job security. We definitely see a talent market in Spain. So I think having an entity here was important for those people. And then also for myself, before we had an entity here, although as a director and shareholder of our UK business, I was basically a freelancer invoicing that business. Personally, I wasn't so fussed, but I think, when you're speaking to partners, potential customers, hires here, there's a lot more clout that you have, I think, if you're a, director of a local business versus being a freelancer with some kind of grey tie to something based in a completely different country.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it makes sense that, you being based here, other members of the team, as you mentioned, there's 3 of you here now, and that you see that this could be a potential market for you to continue to hire. I think that definitely makes sense. I mean, what was the process like setting up an SL? Is there anything that, if other founders were thinking to do it, is there anything that they should be aware of?
Well, yeah, you can see me grinning. If you're from the UK, it's couldn't be more different here, and that is in the bad sense of couldn't be more different. In the UK, people in the UK will know you can set up a limited company really in minutes, and you can do it online. Here, it's quite painful, so there's a lot of paperwork. You have to, as far as we could tell, and every other person that I know that set up a business here, you have to have an accountant or a lawyer involved. You have to physically go to the tax office twice. I think I've been at the notary kind of 5 times to set up the business. You have to pay thousands of euros. You have to have thousands of euros landed in a Spanish bank account before you can even open the business. It's very different. So that's on setup. And then, not that the UK is great for this either, but there's not many concessions given to a new business here. And, we might touch on this later, but I think Barcelona, from a startup perspective, it's a difficult place to start a business. I would say, the startups that are based here, but there are definitely a few local success stories. I think it's one of the big reasons that you kind of see startups create satellite offices here, because they've then got the clout to, set up those offices from a legal perspective, and you can hire great talent, etc. But to actually out and out start a business here, I think it is difficult.
Given that you started in the UK and then moved to Spain, is that sort of a model that you would recommend, do you think?
I think if we had our time again, yes, we would go about it in the same way.
Yeah.
Have that UK business, and fundamentally the customer base, I think, for what we're doing at the moment, I think is starting to emerge and mature in Spain. 6 years ago, when we started the business, it was much more established in the UK as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's fast forward to today then. You're now working with around 50 or so clients, right? Including some big names, some of which mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. What do you think, what's driving that growth?
Touched on earlier, I think the state of retail today is becoming more complicated. The most successful brands are international. They've got multiple sales channels. Their technology stacks are no longer kind of made up of big monolithic systems that are doing 50 roles in one system. They're made up of smaller, cheaper, more flexible, more single purpose systems. So if you add that together, that plays right into our sweet spot, right? We like solving the most complex integration problems in the fastest growing brands. And I think from a data and integrations perspective, and the reliance on data of retail today is higher than it's ever been. So I think that kind of matches to our mission really well. I think that's kind of the macro view. I think on a more micro level, we've translated that work we're doing for customers into some great case studies, actual case studies that people can read and share, and we can talk about. I think for partnerships has been kind of our main distribution channel to date. We've worked with some great partners, whether they're other software vendors, agencies, logistics companies, et cetera. Having those case studies to hand, and having mutual customers with those partners makes it easy for them to refer us in as one of the provider options, or in many cases, the de facto kind of integration provider. And then lastly, I would say we, in the last probably 6, 7, 8 months, starting to see more word of mouth between brands themselves as well. Would say the e-com community is not a massive one in the kind of small to mid-market sector that we play in. So there's a lot of brands talking to other brands, people moving from one brand to another, etc. And kind of we've definitely got a growing reputation in that community as well.
Okay. And what do you think is the biggest pain point that you're solving for your customers?
Integrations and having accurate data is enabler for growth. If it's not done right, it can, at certain scales, start to restrict growth. If you imagine every time you send an order, the customs data on it is wrong, it gets rejected at customs. Every time you want to do an inventory valuation in your month-end financial reporting, it's inaccurate and you make incorrect budget decisions. Every time you do a return, you are refunding the customer the wrong amount because you picked up the wrong data from the warehouse that's receipted that return. All of that is about data accuracy and the integration of data between systems. If you can't get that right, if you're doing 10, 20, 50, even 100 orders a day, you can probably manually sort it out. If you're doing 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 orders a day, and those errors are throughout those orders and throughout all of that data, then you haven't got a hope in hell of doing any of those kind of core processes right. So we're solving the pain point for us that we believe in is data and integration shouldn't be a restrictor for growth. It should be an enabler, and that's what we're bringing to our brand.
Awesome. Well said. And well, I think as we were touching on, things are going well for you guys. You guys are growing very nicely now, supporting a lot of new clients, a lot of big clients. And I understand that you're growing your team to meet that growth. What are the key roles that you're looking for at the moment?
So we are looking for engineering. So in engineering, we are constantly on the lookout for integrations engineers. So engineers that have an experience of building integrations in the retail space, an engineer that knows what a great integration looks like. One of the kind of roles that works in parallel with integrations engineers is a solution designer role. So this is the kind of much more consultative role. It's the go-between between our engineering team and the brand. So they will design, help a brand test, and that ongoing support. There'll be kind of that first touch point with the brand designing that solution. And that's on kind of the delivery side. And then on the platform and product side, we are looking for a full stack engineer. So, back end role really, but somebody who's going to, the core of their role is going to be kind of owning the microservices between our kind of front end, back end, and the different services we've got in the platform. And we're just about to fire up the search for a platform engineer as well. So somebody who's going to come in and monitor, maintain, and improve our infrastructure as well from a platform perspective. Those are the ones at the moment. I think fast forward 6 months, we're going to start to look for our first growth or sales role.
Wow, cool. Oh, well, exciting times ahead. And what's something important that prospective hires should know about working at HighCohesion?
The main thing that comes to mind is you will be given autonomy. You will, if there's a certain expertise you have, a certain vision you've got in mind in your role, a certain change or improvement you want to make to our product or process, you will be trusted and you'll be given autonomy, resources, time to make that happen. Which means for us, we need to be, prospective hire needs to be somebody that can work like that. There's a high level of trust in the business between the team. There's a high level of support. People are always helping each other. No question is a stupid question, but fundamentally people do work quite independently, and they're kind of, empowered to do that. So I think if that's something that excites you, then definitely interested in having a conversation. And I think the other thing I would touch on is, we're working with some amazing customers. So if you want to be in the heart of the brands that everybody wants to be working with, then I would say, there's very few businesses of our relatively small size who have such an amazing customer base. So I think it's a great place to get exposure to what some of the best in the business are doing.
And we've obviously mentioned that all your team are remote, all these roles would be remote. How do you see building and maintaining culture company culture in a remote business?
The short answer is it's tough. In the days where we were very remote, getting together once a year or had people in the business that had never met, it was tough. There's only so much kind of non-work talk that comes naturally, I think, on a Zoom call, or over Slack or whatever. So I think one of the angles that we've taken is to do more in person. Stuff that is work focused, but also non-work focused. I think we'll just be kind of increasing the cadence of that as time goes on. The other is, I think, making sure that people have the time to, even if it's not social talk or chit chat, that people have the time to engage with each other one to one. That's stuff that's not just focused on work or a project or your next code release or whatever. It's those coaching relationships, the line manager relationships. We're just about to start with a coach, external coach who's going to come and work with the business. So I think the ability for people to speak out when they feel there's a problem or a challenge, and making sure we've got the safe space to do that is a big one. And when people think of culture, that's not sometimes the first thing that comes to mind. But I talked just before about trust, right, and empowerment, and I think the team feeling like they're heard, and even if there's not an immediate answer for something that's maybe not quite perfect, the knowledge and the trust that somebody's going away and working on improving it is a massive one for me, culture-wise. Lastly, I think it's just consciously accepting that these things take longer when you're remote. I think if talked about disadvantages of being remote earlier, and I didn't mention this, but certain things do take longer. You can't go out for a drink with someone, on a Thursday night and every week like you could do if you were in the office. Those natural moments, go and grab a coffee together, grab lunch, whatever, they don't happen so easily. Reading the body language, facial expressions is impossible or much more difficult over a video call. So, put that all together, building relationships and, how that then inputs into culture takes longer. And I think as I've gone through time, it's just being a little bit more accepting of that. Overall, I think we're headed in a positive direction, but it's been tough.
Yeah. And I like that answer because I follow you guys on LinkedIn, and so I see the meetups that you guys do. You're often getting together in London, or you've got like away days in the summer where you'll go to like the Isle of Wight or whatever the location is. I think you do put quite a lot of effort into getting the team together, which is great to see. It's nice to see that your answer wasn't just, oh well, we put a bit of money aside and we get the team together 3 or 4 times a year and that solves it. It's like, actually, no, you're really thinking about how do you ingrain a culture over Slack, and I understand that must be really tough, yeah. But I like the way that you're thinking about that, and that it's not just, you can't just put a plaster over all those challenges with a 2-day trip to Portugal. The fact that you're thinking like that, I think says a lot about you and about your company.
I appreciate that.
And where can, if anybody listening to this is interested in applying for any of those roles, where's best for them to do that?
So they are accessible from our website. There's a link, HighCohesion.com, to our open roles there. We're about to launch a new website, which will have the roles listed out a bit better. Or drop me a line, add me on LinkedIn, drop me an email. Pick that up straight away.
Cool. And you mentioned the new website. This was going to be the next thing I was going to mention. You've just gone through a rebranding exercise. So what was behind that decision?
So it started with a recognition that our previous kind of brand identity was kind of formed out of necessity. It was kind of round one. We had nothing really before. We needed something that looked a little bit formal, that we liked, looked clean, looked professional. I think we kind of had that, but if you go into our website now, it looks like it's being built by somebody off the side of their desk, which it has, because that was me. But we actually started this rebrand off not with design and colors and logos, but with quite an in-depth study of our brand identity. What did it actually mean to be HighCohesion? What was our personality? What was our tone of voice? Who were the personas that that we try and engage with? What do those people like? How do they consume content, image, and so on? So we worked with a really great, well, she was freelancer at the time, Venetia, and she led us through that kind of brand identity piece. She was put in touch with us, by a mutual friend of ours, Claudia, who recently started her own design studio called Aran, which is spelled the same as my name, but pronounced slightly differently. It's her surname. And she then took that brand identity and has done an amazing job of creating a brand out of it. So yes, then that becomes kind of logo, typefaces, colors, and then ultimately she's been designing our new website as well, which is going live quite soon, in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So it's, hopefully will much, as well as kind of looking nicer, feeling nicer, fresher, definitely. It's a little bit different, I think, to typical software identities out there. Certainly, I think speaks to more of the kind of identities that the brands that we want to work with and do work with have, as well as some of the best kind of, I think, partners that support them. And yeah, really excited for it.
Yeah, very excited. And yeah, I mean, so Claudia has also been interviewed on this podcast. She gave a very good interview, so people can also check out my conversation with her. But yeah, I think it's really cool that you guys have gone through that process and that you worked with somebody locally here in Barcelona. And it must have been really exciting for you as the founder of this thing to, as you said, you kind of cobbled it together yourself years ago when you had probably 100 other more pressing things to do. It must have been really exciting to sort of take a step back and be like, well, yeah, who are we? And what is it that we want to stand for? How do I want to be perceived in this next phase of our growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, some of the customer and partner interviews we've done as part of that brand identity process have given us some really useful insights. Some of it's been kind of constructive feedback. A lot of it's been kind of super positive as well. So to hear some of that elicited in a way we've never done before has been great. And then to have that all led by somebody who actually knows what they're doing, and in the form of Claudia has been great, and she's been a kind of real driving force over the last few months on that.
Awesome. I'm really excited to see the new website and all the brand assets as well. Yeah, very excited to see what you guys have come up with. Will it be launched ahead of you guys going to Shop Talk in Barcelona here in June?
Better be. Yes. Yes, it will be. It's launching in May, and then a few weeks later we'll be at Shop Talk. So this year we will be co-hosting a couple of events, the biggest of which will be on the Monday night in Fisca Bar down in Barceloneta, right in the marina. So it's going to be a very brand-focused dinner where we've got a couple of our key partners. It's set up by Centra, who are a Swedish-based e-commerce platform, but a couple of our other partners will be there. And so we're basically going to invite maybe 70, 80 people from either the brands we work with or brands that, we know of and, started to build relationships with, and really just have an evening without selling, of discussion. So there'll be some kind of panel type talks, fireside chats, hopefully some great food, some good drinks, and much more of a kind of community focused event rather than, I think, the sell of the main Shop Talk.
Yeah. But is it exciting for you working in the e-commerce industry to have an internationally recognized e-commerce event here in your city?
Yeah, it's excellent. And Barcelona, and I don't know historically why, I don't know if you do, but with the likes of Mobile World Congress, etc., etc. I think there was another massive e-com event, begins with 4, that's in the city as well. seems to have become this hub for these massive international events where thousands or tens of thousands of people are descending on the city around a very specific theme.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely has a history of, or a fame for being kind of a conference center with Mobile World Congress, as you mentioned, as well as some other like large pharma events and that type of thing. And do you think that it's, I mean, what's your take on the e-commerce industry here in Spain?
Good question. Let me first caveat that with the fact that we've been really UK focused to date. So my answer might be a little bit broad. As a business, I mentioned we're seeing some great green shoots in the US Nordics. Spain now, we've started engaging with a couple of partners and brands, but it's early days. I think also Europe massively differs, I think, kind of north to south, east to west. So the e-com scene, I would say the maturity of the scene a little bit in the UK is very different to Spain. But, that said, in Barcelona here, there's some massive businesses, right? Mango's based here, Desigual, you've got some of the stalwarts of the industry, Buff Headwear, who I think everyone thinks is a US brand, but is actually based in Barcelona. I was looking them up. I think only 7 or 8% of their sales are in Spain globally, which is crazy considering they're based here. And, e-com adjacent, you've got the likes of Glovo and Wallapop based here as well. I think Wallapop maybe it's a bit older, but Glovo, I think, started pretty much at the same time that we moved here. So there are definitely kind of a lot of green shoots in the business. There are brands that started in COVID are still going and still growing strongly today. But I think also e-com in Spain has had either a very B2B or wholesale focus. So, in the kind of D2C first world that we play in, there are less players, although that's definitely changing. I would say Spain is still very tied to quite a few legacy systems, the quite an old school way of doing things in the majority versus the UK. So a lot of brands here still use PrestaShop as I think the most common e-com platform. You are definitely seeing migrations to Shopify, but PrestaShop is super complicated to set up and run. So that those migrations are massive projects and they require massive investment. So I think you're starting to have to see a real mindset shift in how brands operate. They know there's a better way.
Is there any brand that you think does it well here? Is there any experience that you like?
Yeah, I mean, one of the kind of Barcelona poster childs, I guess, for e-com has been Tropic Feel. So, brand that started, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago, but really saw growth. They cater to that kind of digital nomad, somebody who travels a lot for work. So they do shoes, backpacks, luggage, I think apparel now as well. They're doing things right. They are, working with, I would say, some of the best globally partners, software providers that we know of. They're not a customer of ours. Would love them to be. Get in touch if you're listening. But yeah, I'd say that's a great example. You've also got, coincidentally, started by an old neighbor of ours, Barna Glasses, who started as a very small company doing blue light blocking glasses. And they've kind of grown and grown. They've kind of taken some shifts here, there, and everywhere, kind of very D2C focused initially, and then have moved a lot into wholesale as well now, and started at a time when suddenly it felt like there are 100 or 1,000 blue light eye blocking glasses on the market. But they've kept going, and I would say, definitely in Spain and European now, they're definitely a leader in that sector as well. Those are two good examples.
Let's talk a bit about non-work things then. So like when you're not busy building HighCohesion, what's your favorite way to unwind in the city?
Well, I touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but the forest right by our house is great. It's called the Coisarola. It's Europe's biggest natural park and city park that's adjacent to a city. if I'm not walking the dog there, mountain biking there is probably one of my favorite things to do. It's really hilly, the forest, some great trails, really kind of great way to blow out the cobwebs. So definitely, yeah, definitely mountain biking. And then I would say since we moved here 8 years ago, the food and drink scene has really evolved, right? And anyone that knows me or knows us and my partner knows that we love checking out new openings, or kind of going to a dinner to an old favorite. So although that's kind of now very much moved from a midweek thing to a weekend thing, I think that checking out that kind of restaurant and bar scene in Barcelona is a great thing to do as well. There seems to be a new place opening every week that's worth checking out.
Yeah, nice. Any hidden gem recommendations?
So I feel like I've mentioned this forest about 1,000 times now in this podcast. But I'd say if you're here for a long weekend and you want to do something different, you're somebody that likes, being outdoors, there are some great restaurants in the middle of that forest, which feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. They feel very Catalan. They're kind of cooking on wood fires. They do good Catalan food, and you can hike or bike to them literally from the city. You might be 5 or 6 kilometers in a straight line from your Airbnb or your hotel, but you can feel like you're in a completely different world. So I think
Yeah.
to come to a very different side of the city, but still be very close. I would say that's kind of the hidden gem.
Yeah, like it. No, I love those places. I'll have to get like a specific one from you because I'm creating a list of recommendations from the guests of Built in Barcelona. So I'll be adding a link to one of those. The other place that's great in the Collserola that we've been to together is there's a vineyard as well, which is brilliant.
Yes, that is a good one as well. Yeah, who would have thought? Vineyard, winery, restaurant, all in one place. Can't go wrong.
Yeah, Collserola's got loads of sort of hidden magic to it. So, and I know that you are fan number one of the Collserola, so it doesn't surprise me that your recommendation stems from there. I mean, you've lived around, so you've not only lived in Barcelona, right? You've lived in other parts of Catalonia. You lived in the Costa Brava for a while, up in the mountains as well in Andorra. What's been the highlight for you across all of those?
I think if I had to pick one, it would be where we lived up on the coast. Living in the mountains, a winter season in Andorra was incredible. As you know, I love skiing, I love being in the mountains, but we lived in a small village on the coast called El Port de la Selva, which is about 20 kilometers or so from the French border, so north of Barcelona. Beautiful village. We lived a stone's throw from the sea, a little bit like Barcelona. It's got the sea on one side and mountains on the other, but on a kind of micro scale. And yeah, it's just a chance to live somewhere where I never thought would live somewhere like that. Really, beautiful access to all the outdoor stuff you wanted to do. Some great little local restaurants. In the winter it was absolutely dead. There was about 300 or 400 people there, and in the summer it would balloon up to 10,000. But in those shoulder seasons, spring, autumn, it was a wonderful place to live. So that was the highlight, I think.
Yeah, El Port de la Selva is beautiful. I mean, I didn't know of it until I came to visit you there, and it's just an amazing place. Really, really,
Yeah,
that's a proper hidden gem of Catalonia is El Port de la Selva.
definitely.
Coming towards the end of the conversation, then, bit of a fun one. If you weren't building Heiko at the moment, what else would you love to be doing?
Well, toughest question yet, I think. I think apart from doing a bit more time on doing the things I love, spending time with family, friends, some of the sports, I think I would be doing something that's fully impact led. So I think, there's a million challenges, I think, in the wider society and world today. And if I could do something that even changed, a tiny bit of the trajectory of one of those things into a more positive one, I think that would be very fulfilling. And, as far as I know, and what I would like to do post HighCohesion is something that kind of focuses on that. I think in HighCohesion, we've proved, and I've proved to myself, can build something that works, that is successful from a functional point of view. I think I can motivate and look after a team, high talented, high performing individuals who definitely need that fulfillment. I think taking that and doing that in something that kind of has a wider cause, I think would be pretty special.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah, I could totally see you doing something like that. And as you say, you've got to get HighCohesion to where you want it to be first. Speaking of which, what's your vision for HighCohesion in the next 12 months?
So we are definitely growth focused. So the plan, this year is we want to double the business from a revenue perspective. That is really going to involve, I think, on formalizing some of the relatively informal partnerships we've got. So how do we build partnerships into that growth engine? I think it's focusing on those markets where we're starting to see those green shoots, the US and the Nordics. I think making sure we continue to bring the best talent into the business. So if that stuff I just talked about is the kind of demand side, we need to make sure we can supply that demand properly. And also, I know everyone talks about this, but use AI, but in a way that really moves the needle for us. We have, over the past 12 months, definitely been exploring with AI in almost every part of the business. Plan for the next 12 months is to really embed AI into, wherever we see a application for it in the business, whether that's sales, whether that's support, whether that's the product itself, writing, deploying, testing code. I think in our space to use AI in a way that really moves the needle for us as a business and ultimately for our customers as well.
Brilliant. Well, I'm just really excited to see how it goes. It's been great following your journey so far. And I will put links to your website and LinkedIn, etc., in the show notes for today's episode. I do think people will really enjoy seeing how you guys engage on LinkedIn. I think you do like a really good job of that. A lot of people do not do that well. I actually think that both yourself and your team do that very well. And I really love the case studies that you guys pull together. I think they're really well written and tell a great story. So I'll be definitely following along myself and also posting the links for anybody else that might want to follow you. And Aran, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really great hearing your story and all your insights. Thank you so much for sharing those with me and with anybody that's listening. For anybody listening that wants to learn more, you can check out HighCohesion and connect with Aran on LinkedIn, as I said. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast for more stories from Barcelona's founders, creatives, and builders. So that's it for today's episode. Until next time, Aran, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kris. It's been a pleasure.